While I have you out here, figured it'd be good as time as any to do a quick recap on old Project GT6. I got it running. It looked good from 20 feet away, but I missed my deadline. And after I missed my deadline, it was really tough to stay motivated on it. And the hope and optimism that I had for that project had miraculously vanished. So that brings us to today. Where's the GT6? How is the GT6? What even is a GT6? So this story goes way back. I've had many Triumphs over the years. All of them were Spitfires. I've never had a GT6 before this one. I was at work one day and a guy came through my shop and we got talking cars. And inevitably, if you talk to me for long enough, British cars always come up. He mentions that he has a Triumph GT6 and wants to know if I want to buy it. At the time, it wasn't going to happen. A few months later, he stops by and approaches me about building a car for him. After we discussed the project and came to terms on the price, he threw the GT6 in as a cherry on top. So that's how I came to acquire the GT6. The first time I saw it, it was in a barn covered in dust. The gentleman that I got it from put new tires and wheels on it to roll it out of the barn and deliver it to my house. Being the collector of projects that I am, I parked it. It wasn't time for it to be worked on yet, so I went through it, kind of assessed everything, took an inventory of what parts I had, what parts I didn't have, and then I promptly parked it in the row with a bunch of other old cars. If you want more of this story, we actually did an episode of the Projecteers podcast. I'll put a link in the description if you're interested. You could check it out and listen to me and my buddy Kevin talk about project cars and different things. But we actually recorded one episode of that podcast from inside the GT6. Over the years, I tried to sell the car as a project several times, but I never had enough interest to the point that anybody even came and looked at it. I eventually decided to bite the bullet, and that's what you see here. After several years of sitting, I decided to pull it out of storage and see what I could make out of it. The purpose of the build had a couple different objectives to it. First and foremost, I wanted to see how easy of a builder it would be. I didn't want to get real in depth, I didn't want to do a frame off, but I wanted to see if I could do more or less some kind of refurbishment with the car. If I could tidy it up, paint a few parts, if I could turn it into something that looked and functioned well to get it to the Ratfink car show that year. And most importantly, to see what it was like to have a GT6. I'd heard of these cars, I'd seen pictures of these cars. I had seen in person maybe 2 of them in my entire life up to this point. And so I was really excited to have one, to drive it, to sit in it, to see what it felt like. After having several Spitfires over the years, I had a pretty good sense of how these cars behave, but having never owned a GT6 or driven a GT6, there was definitely a lot of curiosity there. So like I said before, I really didn't want to do a frame-off restoration. It was more of a refurbishment. No major disassembly, just a lot of degreasing and paint. And a few new parts. So where did the project end up? I had huge aspirations of putting this thing together, ripping it around town, and just enjoying it. I didn't want to spend a ton of money on it. I just wanted a good knock-around car that looked cool and was fun to drive. So that leads us to today. Where are we? Where's the GT6? What have I got done? Well, I'm going to level with you. It's not here. After getting it to a presentable place, I missed the deadline for the car show. And that was a really weird experience because there was this distinct emotional separation from what I had envisioned doing with the car. Once I missed that deadline, I just lost all the wind out of my sails. I had fantasized about getting this vintage race car looking vehicle to the car show. I found, as I kept working on it, there was another Triumph lurking in the back of my mind. And that's really the car that I wanted to build. And I don't know if I was using the GT6 as a way to fill that void. But the longer I worked on it, the more I kept thinking about the other Triumph. And I was like, that's the Triumph I want. That's the one I've envisioned for the last 20 years. This is just a placeholder. And so ultimately I made the decision to sell the car. So here we are, a few hard decisions later, and one less GT6 in my life. Now, do I regret the project? Absolutely not. I had an absolute ball with it. I had all kinds of other aspirations and ideas for that car. Unfortunately, they won't see reality, but that's okay. That's part of life. So what now? Well, I'm back in the saddle, and we're going to get building more cars.